Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2025 TKO Takes UFC Awards show. If you're expecting Oliveira to win Submission of the Year or JDM versus Bilal to be Fighter of the Year, this is the wrong award show for you. So casuals beware, because unlike the mainstream MMA media, we're actually crowning the real rightful winners of the MMA awards this year. And let's reveal the awards that will be given out. We have Fighter of the Year, Knockout of the Year, Submission of the Year, Unk of the Year, Prospect, Comeback, the Jake Paul of the Year, the Canelo Hands of the Year, and the Downfall of the Year. So let's start things with the Fighter of the Year. Our top 6 candidates are Petr Yan, who went 2-0, beating the up-and-coming Marcus McGee, and then dominating the bantamweight GOAT, Merab to once again become the new bantamweight champion. And then Islam Makhachev defended his lightweight title against Renato Moicano, and then moved up the division to become a double champion by defeating Jack Della Maddalena. And then we have Melquizael Costa, who went 4-0, 2 by finish, most notably last night's head kick of Morgan Charrier, giving him his 4th win of the year and one of the best divisions in the UFC. I mean, featherweight. He beat Andre Fili, C-Rod, Julian Erosa, and now Morgan Charrier. So that's as good as it gets for unranked wins. So he definitely belongs as a candidate for Fighter of the Year. Then we have Waldo Cortez Acosta, who went 4-1. He started the year by beating Ryan Spann and Sergey Spivak. And then he lost to Sergey Pavlovich, which is no shame since he's a top 5 guy. And then he bounced back by knocking out Ante Dalia and then beating Shamil Gaziev on just 2 days' notice. So even with a loss, 4 wins at heavyweight, and he's been super active, he definitely belongs as well. Then we have Joshua Van. And yes, I'm putting an asterisk here because Pantoja's injury and their fight took away some of the meaning of that win. But on paper, shout out Anthony Smith, he still went 4-0 and won a title, which is insanely impressive considering he started the year barely ranked. And finally, Merab Dvalishvili, who went 3-1, with 3 of those wins being title defenses. He nearly broke the record for the most title defenses in a year, so despite the loss of Petr Yan, it was still a fantastic year for Merab. So let's now crown the 2025 TKO Takes Fighter of the Year. Islam Makhachev, and man, this was close. Merab was a very close second place because of his huge wins over O'Malley, Umar, and Sandhagen. Those are incredible wins, but it's hard to not pick a guy who, yes, had a Mickey Mouse title defense against Renato Moicano. Definitely Mickey Mouse title defense. But he still defended a belt and then went up a weight class the same year and won another belt. So that's really impressive to me. So I slightly lean towards Makhachev, but Merab and Van were right there too. And honestly, if Van got a decisive win over Pantoja, or if Merab had beaten Yan, either of them would have won this. And next is the prestigious Canelo Hands of the Year, inspired by Bilal Muhammad saying he'd show JDM his Canelo-like hands when it comes to throwing punches. So this award is meant to crown the UFC fighter with the best boxing of 2025. 6 candidates are Steve Garcia, Manuel Torres, Joshua Van, Michael Morales, Azamat Murzakanov, and Waldo Cortez Acosta. And the UFC fighter who, in my opinion, had the crispest boxing and the best hand technique goes to Joshua Van. Van isn't as powerful as guys like Manuel Torres or Steve Garcia or Michael Morales, but he clearly has more technique and setup behind his combinations. And he primarily throws hands, almost exclusively, and does it at an elite level. So congrats to the new flyweight champion Joshua Van on winning the Canelo Hands Award. And our next award is going to be Fight of the Year. This one is really challenging. The 5 candidates are Julian Erosa versus Melquizael Costa, Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van, Mateusz Rebecki versus Chris Duncan, Esteban Ribovic versus Elvis Brenner, and Nazim Sajikov versus Nicholas Motto. All 5 of these fights are deserving, but the one that narrowly edges out for me is going to be Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. And for me, what puts it over the top is that I watched this live at a Hooters, and the atmosphere in that building during this fight was insane. Royval threw about 2 million straight punches. Van kept slipping off to the side, landing with counter uppercuts, hooks, and big right hands. And then Van just blew the roof off of the Hooters by knocking down Royval in the final seconds. So that moment sealed it as the fight of the year. and what was a very tight race, especially compared to how clear 2024 was. Wasn't even close. So, congrats to Van Royval winning Fighter of the Year. Next up, we must discuss the Unk of the Year, the best fighter above 35 years of age in 2025, and the best Unks this year were Amin Zahabi, Alexander Volkanovski, Michael Venom Page, Raoni Barcelos, and Azamat Murzakanov. This one is really tough, especially in the year of the Unks. And you may be asking, TKO, where's Kamaru Usman? Look, man, Unk only fought once, and it wasn't winning a belt like Volk. That's much different. So I got to give credit to the guys that are old and still active, which makes them even more impressive. So, in my opinion, the 2025 Unk of the Year is Raoni Barcelos, because although he didn't rise up the rankings like Zahabi or Murzakanov did, his wins were the least expected by far, making him the ultimate underdog Unk. I'm going to coin that. His 3 wins were against Peyton Talbot, Cody Garbrandt, and Ricky Simone. Like, those are 3 incredible wins to have, and please give Barcelos a ranked opponent like Marcus McGee next. That would be a scrap. So UFC, I'm begging you to make that matchup. So, congrats to Raoni Barcelos on becoming the Unk of the Year. And if we're going to have an Unk of the Year award, we have to balance it out with the Prospect of the Year. And this one might have been the hardest category to judge all year. The top 6 prospects, in my opinion, were Walter Walker, who went 3-0 in 2025. All 3 wins coming by heel hook. Next up is Ateba Gautier, who had a tremendous 2025, going 3-0. All 3 wins by knockout. Then we have Quillen Salkid, who went 3-0 with 2 first-round KOs and a full-on grappling masterclass against Yanel Ashmus, showing his real versatility. Then there's Chimaev, who had one of the craziest starts to a UFC career you'll ever see. He wins his UFC contract on Contender Series on a Tuesday. Then UFC needs a short notice replacement for UFC 319 that Saturday. So 4 days later, he's making his UFC debut, submits his opponent. Then he follows that up by knocking out Eric McConaughey at UFC 322. So what a start for Chimaev. And then next up, we have Kevin Vallejos, who just had a massive 2025. He knocked out Sungwoo Choi, beat Danny Silva by decision, and then last night capped off the year by getting a spinning back fist to a ground and pound KO over Giga Chikadze. So the Argentinian topuria had a tremendous year. And lastly, we've got Jacoby Smith in the welterweight division. He knocked out Preston Parsons in round 1, then submitted the notoriously hard to finish Nico Price in round 2. So this guy's insanely explosive with his hands, has massive takedowns, and if he cleans up his cardio, he's going to be a serious problem in 2026. So, man, this was a brutal award to decide. The clear top 3 for me were Vallejos, Gautier, and Salkid. But to me, Prospect of the Year means what unranked or fringe top 15 fighter like Vallejos showed the most potential to become a future champion. Walter Walker might heel hook the entire unranked heavyweight division, but I don't see that working against guys like Blades, Almeida, or Volkov. Gautier, as impressive as he was, fought absolute cans. So for me, it comes down to Salkid versus Vallejos. So the prospect who had the best win and showed the clearest path to becoming a future champion was Kevin Vallejos. Knocking out a phenomenal striker like Giga Chikadze, just 24 years old, is special. And that moment separated him in the race that was as tight as it gets. So congrats to Kevin Vallejos, your 2025 TKO Takes Prospect of the Year. And our next award is the Jake Paul of the Year award. You can also call it the Randy Orton of the Year, whatever you prefer. This award goes to the most impressive case of a fighter absolutely sliming out a crafty veteran. Our nominees are Benoit Saint Denis for a 16-second knockout over Beneil Dariush, Peyton Talbot, who dominated Henry Cejudo, Joshua Van brutalized Bruno Silva, Michael Morales, who marauded his way through Gilbert Burns, Paddy Pimblett, who beat the brakes off Michael Chandler, Yusuf Salal, who instantly submitted 40-year-old Josh Emmett, and then also our prospect of the year, Kevin Vallejos, who knocked out a 37-year-old Giga Chikadze and only 24 years old. So which fighter did the vet the most dirty? My opinion, it's going to be Michael Morales. Morales overwhelmed and finished Gilbert Burns in the first round. and that was a really sad fight to watch. From the opening bell, it was very clear who was going to win, and Burns looked so small in there. I almost felt bad for him. Michael Morales definitely had the clearest case of a Jake Paul moment, so he's going to win Jake Paul of the year for the UFC. And then next up, we have the downfall of the year, the fighter whose stock dropped the most from 2024. Our unfortunate candidates are GM3, who went 0-3. I guess he manifested that. Leon Edwards, who went 0-2. Bilal Muhammad, who also went 0-2. Marvin Vettori went 0-3. And then we have Nikita Krylov, who went 0-2. GM3 went 2-1 2024 with submission wins over solid guys like Edmund Shabazian and Brian Barberena. And his only loss was a competitive fight with RDR, so he was still a respectable middleweight. But in 2025, he didn't get a single win, losing to guys like Brad Tavares, Michael Oleksiejczuk, and Kyle Dawkins. And then we have Leon Edwards, who was the champion last year and came into 2025 as the #1 ranked welterweight. Then he got submitted by somewhat short notice Sean Brady, and then knocked out by Carlos Prates. And now he's sitting at number 9 in the division. And then we visit another chapter of a former welterweight champ with Bilal Muhammad. Bilal won the belt last year by beating Leon, but in 2025, his 11-fight unbeaten streak was snapped by JDM, costing him his title. And then he lost to Ian Gary. So now he's beltless, and likely he's going to fight a rising killer in his next fight. And then Marvin Vettori had a really sad year. It's just clear he is not the same guy who took round 1 from Whitaker and beat Costa, beat Hermanson. So this year he lost to Brendan Allen, then lost to Roman Dolidze, a guy he already beat not too long ago, which is a huge sign of regression. Then he lost to Bruno Ferreira. So going from a solid top 10 gatekeeper to unranked is a clear downfall to me. And then we got one of my favorite fighters, Nikita Krylov. He didn't fight in 2024, but he came to 2025 on a 3-fight win streak and was my dark horse of the division. I was begging to see this guy fight Roundtree or Mirzakhanov because I think he could have done something, but seeing him get knocked out in the first round twice by Reyes and Guskov was just shocking. Now he has zero momentum going into 2026. So who had the biggest downfall in 2025? The 2025 TKO Takes biggest downfall of the year goes to Leon Edwards, simply because he was a former champion and is now in a position where he could realistically be fed to guys like Rinat Fakhretdinov, Gabriel Bonfim, or Joel Alvarez. So that fall is pretty bad. So unfortunately, congrats to Leon Edwards for becoming the downfall of the year winner. And if we're going to have a downfall of the year award, we have to have a comeback fighter of the year. And this was another stat category in 2025. Let's start with Brendan Allen. In 2024, he went life and death with Chris Curtis, then lost to Nasruddin Imavov, and then lost to Anthony Hernandez in early 2025, dropping all the way to number 12 in the middleweight rankings. But from then on, Allen turned it around, had a fun fight with Marvin Vettori, and then on short notice pulled off a massive upset over Rainier de Ritter, launching himself to number 5 in the division. And now he's in a spot where he's probably going to fight number 1 ranked Dricus du Plessis sometime in 2026. So compared to last year, Brendan Allen is in a much better spot. Next up is Benoit Saint Denis, who in 2024 went 0-2, got knocked out by Dustin Poirier, then absolutely demolished by Renato Moicano in his home country, completely killing his hype train. But in 2025, Benoit flipped the script, going 3-0, submitting Kyle Prepolek, submitting Mauricio Ruffi, and then starching Beneil Dariush in 16 seconds, putting himself right back in the top 10 at lightweight. And then we've got Kyle Dawkins, who wasn't even in the UFC in 2024. He had been cut all the way back in 2022, but when Michel Pereira needed a short notice opponent in China, Dawkins stepped up and knocked him out in 43 seconds, and 3 months later, he followed that up by knocking out our GOAT, GM3, in 50 seconds. So going from not being in the UFC at all to back-to-back sub-minute knockouts is inspirational UFC script writing. And my next up is Alexander Volkanovski, who in 2024, I can't do that. In 2024, Volk was coming off a brutal knockout loss to Islam Makhachev. Then he got knocked out even more devastating fashion by Ilia And to make things even worse, once Ilia vacated the belt, Volk was matched up with the most dangerous gunslinger at featherweight, Diego Lopez. And there was a very real chance Diego was going to chin him, but my goat, Volk, was in the kitchen cooking up a crafty veteran game plan and went out there and beat Diego Lopez 4-1, reclaiming the 145 title. And man, my heart was happy watching that one. And then our final candidate is Yuri Prochazka. Last year, he got knocked out for the second time by Alex Pereira, and it generally felt like his title hopes were over. But in 2025, Yuri bounced back with 2 finishes over Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. And now, he could be fighting Carlos for the belt if Pereira moves up to heavyweight. So going from possibly going down the middleweight to being right back in the title picture is a massive turnaround. But the rightful comeback of the year is Alexander Volkanovski. And the reason it's not Benoit is simple. Benoit saved his career, Volk saved his legacy. If Volk lost to Diego Lopez, I don't know how we look at him. Instead, after back-to-back brutal knockouts, taking a long layoff as an older fighter, he still went out there and beat a guy who's going to be at the top of his division for years to come. So congrats to Alexander Volkanovski on winning the 2025 TKO Takes Comeback of the Year. And our second to last award is Submission of the Year. And in my opinion, the top 5 submissions of the year were Ignacio Bahamondes' triangle over Jalen Turner, Anthony Hernandez's standing rear naked choke over Roman Dolidze, Gene Silva's ninja choke versus Bryce Mitchell, Walter Walker's heel hook over Nezuchukwu, and Amazov's Darce choke over Neil Magny, where he even trapped Neil's arm. It was definitely one of the most creative Darce chokes I've ever seen. So this year is actually pretty tight when it comes to submissions. Paddy's triangle was clear last year, but there's a few that could win this. So the 2025 submission of the year is going to Anthony Hernandez for his vicious standing rear naked choke over Roman Dolidze. This one was just nasty. Roman was trying to grab the cage. Herb Dean says, "I'm going to take a point." And Hernandez basically says, "Not yet." He lands 2 brutal knees, drops Dolidze to a knee, sinks in the rear naked choke, drags him away from the cage while Roman is still on his feet, and Roman taps. Just disgusting work from Fluffy, making him the rightful 2025 TKO Takes Submission of the Year winner. And shout out to Amazov's Darce, Gene Silva's ninja choke. Those were very close candidates. And lastly, we have the big one, and easily the hardest award to give out, Knockout of the Year. We have 10 candidates. Yes, 10. That's how good the knockouts were this year. The nominees are Ilia Topuria's KO over Charles Oliveira to win the belt, Malcolm Wellmaker's step-in right hook against Chris Moutinho, Randy Brown's right hand that face-planted Nicholas Dalby, Robocop's left hook over Jack Hermanson that left him unconscious for like 5 minutes, Mauricio Rufi's wheel kick KO over Bobby Green, Cesar Almeida's left hook against Abdul Razak Al Hassan that left him stiff as a board, Mario Pinto's left hook right hook combo over Austin Lane, Quillen Salkid's head kick KO over Nasrat Hack Press, Lerone Murphy's spinning elbow over Aaron Pico, and lastly, Ismail Nerdiev's overhand KO of Ryan Loder. And man, how do I even pick this? Literally every single one of these knockouts are KO of the year worthy, and I'm just going to trust my gut in this one. So the 2025 TKO Takes Knockout of the Year is going to Ilia Topuria's knockout over Charles Oliveira, with Mauricio Rufi's wheel kick KO coming in a very close second. Look, the Hooters I was at went bonkers for this. My girlfriend at the time got mad because I yelled so loud when the knockout happened, which is how I knew she wasn't the one. But I've never reacted to a KO like that before. The closest was Holloway knocking out Gaethje, but Ilia knocking out Charles gave me a once-in-a-generation feeling. What separates it from Rufi's KO is simply the context. Skill-wise, the devastation, they're equal, but this was a high-level championship fight against the number 2 ranked lightweight in the world, and that level of competition puts it over the top for me. And plus I saw it live, so it just hit different, kind of like Roy Val versus Van as well. So that was the TKO Takes UFC Awards show, and let's take a look at our winners one last time. Fighter of the Year was Islam Makhachev. Fight of the Year was Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. Knockout of the Year was Ilia Topuria's against Charles Oliveira. Anthony Hernandez won Submission of the Year. Raoni Barcelos was the Unk of the Year. Joshua Van won Canelo hands. And comeback fighter was Alexander Volkanovski. Downfall belonged to Leon Edwards. And the best prospect was Kevin Vallejos. And the Jake Paul award went to Michael Morales. So that is my 2025 UFC award show. Make sure to like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And God bless you all.